Welcome to Best Practices Academy training. Today we'll be going through EHR 101, focusing on front desk tasks and workflow. When you first boot the system, you'll see it's asking for an organization code as well as a password. For this case, we put in our organization code and password and click log in. Once we've done so, it's going to show us a screen just like this. So in this case, I'm going to be booting into our demo service here. We'll go ahead and then put our individual username and password into the system as well. Primarily for front desk and general office management roles, you'll be using primarily the EHR practice management side. You don't really need to be in the admin side too much. If we do have another location at the practice, we want to log into a separate location, go through and choose that location here. This practice only has one location in our demo. We'll go ahead and click log in. This is going to have, depending on what your settings are, be a different pop-up here. This is our patient selection window. It could also be our patient dashboard, our practice dashboard. Up at the very top, we'll see some useful tools. We'll see file, and this is where we can go to immediately create a new patient or modify a patient. We'll see some report details, correspondence we can generate for any letters we want to create in the system. Tools, this is where we can access like our user preferences, color settings, and a bunch of other details. Our billing section, this is a quick access to some of our billing details. That's also over in our billing tab. Then I'll have our help section here. Um, if you have any questions in the system about basic questions on how to do things, you can use this help section right here. Click on that and that'll boot in. This allows you to go through and search for different sections here. You can open up, all right, well, how do I do something in our dashboard? Let's click into the personal dashboard. It'll walk you through step by step in this process of how to do a lot of the tasks, as well as you can use a search function here, use a keyword search to find whatever topic you're looking for. A very useful tool for quick things that you may not use super frequently and you may forget from the training process. Have it in your daily workflow for a while. As far as the system goes, on our left-hand side here, this first button is going to be our open chart button. This allows us to open up that demographics window. We can find our patients, then go directly into their charts from here. We can also go and directly modify things like their patient insurance and other details. The second one's going to be our dashboard, and this is your primary spot in the system as your daily workflow that you can go through and make any edits or changes to. And we're modifying patients, moving patients through the system, anything of that nature. This third tab is going to be our document imaging module. That's where we can go through and scan in documents. We can also go through and import documents into the system and file them to patient's charts. That's how you're editing or managing documents or loading into a patient chart. You'll typically do through here. This next one, this fourth one, is going to be our scheduler. Looks like a calendar, so we can click on that and open up our scheduler. Then we're gonna have our knowledge base. This is very infrequently used, especially by front desk. This is primarily more so used by providers and only specific providers, depending on what knowledge bases you have loaded in. This is our email button. Again, very infrequently used, especially by front desk roles. Um, this next one's gonna be our billing tab. Again, not something we'll be going into in the front desk training. And then this last one here is going to be our some reports and indicators dashboard. So this is going to be things like referral tracking and key performance indicators. Again, this is more so going to be the office side of running the business, not necessarily anything patient focused. Where we'll start today is going to be our scheduler. We'll click on that, and it is a pop-out scheduler, which is super nice. If you have any multiple monitors, you can have a scheduler on one side and something else on the other. Otherwise, you can also just minimize that scheduler here. So going from the scheduler, we're going to go down the left side, across the top, and then the middle section here to cover each section. On the left-hand side, we can go through and search for a patient if we wanted to. So we can just search for, say, a test patient in the system, and we'll bring up test options here. If we wanted to go ahead and search by first name, you can also just start typing a comma and start typing Scott's name here as well, and we'll have Scott test here go up as well. If we want to go through and search for a patient fully, we can click this button right here, and this will bring up our patient selection window. We also can click this button right here to recall an appointment, and this is what's going to allow us access to our waiting list if we have anybody set on the waiting list, anyone who wants to schedule a follow-up appointment, or any canceled appointments if there are any. We can also click this plus sign right here to add a waiting appointment, and we can add a waiting appointment for a particular time or day or couple of days, depending if you have a fully booked out schedule. You can try and find an available time slot for there. You also can go through and select different days. So you can choose any time on the scheduler to click to a different date and to view any open appointments or closed appointments those days. You want to change your visual look very quickly, but not permanently. You can change your time slots to see, okay, I want to see the entire day with 30-minute time slots or hour time slots, or I want to see everything with 15-minute time slots like a standard on this particular scheduler. We'll also see our appointment status if we have an appointment selected, whether it's canceled, no show, confirmed, arrived, and you can actually go through and adjust those by clicking on those as you're updating a appointment. Lower section here will have some statistics as far as any canceled appointments, booked appointments, confirmed, arrived. You can see all those details here as well. And then you also can track your waiting list statistics down here. Going across the top, we'll have a remove button, and I'll show you how that works in a little bit. Ever cut and copy. There's other places to do that. You also can get to that if you right click on a particular appointment. So I prefer to use those buttons more so by right clicking than having to click on an appointment and then clicking those. But it's more of a personal preference thing than anything. They do the same thing. This will be our report section. So if you wanted to print out a scheduled list of appointments, either for your entire day or for a couple of days, or a specific patient's only scheduled appointments, you can go through and select that patient there and then make sure to print all their appointments as well. So that way you can get a patient the record of what appointments they have coming up for their treatment plan. Setup is primarily going to be used more so on an office management side, but depending on the practice and your workflow, you may be in this section as well. The setup for today is going to change where you can just change the scheduler for today as far as adding or removing columns, changing hours, and things like that. Set for all days is where you're permanently making scheduler changes. Blocking scheduler is where you can go through and use this to block out recurring appointment times where you don't have someone in the office. So, say there's a meeting on Monday mornings until 10 a.m. You can block off a particular provider scheduler until 10 a.m. to make sure that no appointments are being booked during that time for that particular provider. You can use the same thing for blocking off holidays and recurring things like that as well. Scheduler display settings. This is where we can go through and create custom templates. So if you want to see only specific columns for certain people, we can have those templates then show up in here. For some practices, this is really useful if you have a lot of providers and a lot of columns and very specific job roles for certain front desks, where you can go through and say, all right, well, this person only needs to see, say, these three columns. They don't need to worry about the rest of the scheduler. They can then just focus on that by selecting that particular view. For practices that don't have lots of columns, then it's usually best to just see the entire scheduler. And we also have our appointment reasons, and again, a more of a office management step where you would go through and change what appointment reasons are available for a particular provider. Um, Unreserve is a button we can use to take a reserved spot that is right click and marked as reserved and then remove that reserve. Transfer restore. This is in the case of if you need to transfer an entire provider's list of patients or appointments for a particular day or a set of days to somebody else, or for whatever reason, say a column gets accidentally deleted. If something happens, if you're working on updating the scheduler and somehow you accidentally remove a column for a provider and those appointments disappear, well, they're actually not gone. They're just going to have to be restored back to the proper column once you fix the columns. The flag at the top here allows us to go through and create a flag in the system. Think of flags essentially as a multi-use um, tool. They can basically go from basically internal emails. They can also be used as sticky notes. They can be used as alerts and reminders. Um, you go from your account, you choose who does it go to. So we can search for a particular user or a particular group. We can also just go ahead and start typing, and it's going to bring up a particular person's name if you know who you want to send it to. If you want to send it to yourself as a reminder, also you can use self right here and it'll automatically populate you in. Or you can click all and it's just going to send it to everybody. We can send a general reminder, or we can also send it about a particular patient. So we can go through and search for a patient in here. Just say this will be about Scott Test. We can put in a subject here. We can also assign a task if we would like, and then our frequently created tasks will go ahead and be in this drop down then. Um, we have our messages right here. So this is where we can type in the actual message of that flag. Add attachments if we would like from here. And this is going to be the important process is the due date. So when does this flag end, or is there a particular due date for it? Or is this just a recurring reminder about a particular patient? You can choose the status and priority. And then this spot over here, you can choose where does this flag show up. So does this show up on every single screen in relation to this patient? So when this patient, if you're on any screen that has this patient on them, it'll show up. If it wants to just show up in charge capture or in their chart or in a claim, you're choosing where in the system is this particular flag going to show up. You can choose, is there an expiration date for the flag? And once you've chosen what screen it's going to pop up on, you can say, all right, well, I actually don't want this to show up in our inbox in our dashboard like a message. I just want this to be a pop-up flag. You would select alert only and it won't send it to the inbox. You also can prevent other users from removing that flag. So if you say, hey, everybody, we need to make sure we're remembering this for this patient, you can say, click that, and that way no other user can remove that particular flag. A very, very useful tool. Um, Depends on how creative you are using it. A lot of practices use it for a lot of different things. Some practices don't use it at all. It just depends on your preferred communication methods. Search appointment. We can go through and search for an available time slot. So you can use this to find a particular patient. Search for what day to what day you have available. So let's say we want to go from today to into tomorrow. We can search for particular days. How long of a time slot do we want to search for? We can go ahead and click search right here. What this allows us to do then is scroll through the entire list of appointment slots that are available for 15-minute time slots or 30-minute time slots, depending on what you have. You can also select a particular reason that would say, all right, procedure 60 minutes, is like a default appointment type. We can go through, well, now that's going to update this to 60-minute appointment slots, and we hit search again, and that's going to go through it and search for particular 60-minute slots. So um, that way we can go through and find available appointment slots on a given day. Eligibility, pretty cool feature here. So this is going to go through and do auto eligibility checks for any patient that's in the system a day before that particular day. So what it's going to do is it's going to go through any patient that's on the scheduler that has active eligibility for digital checking. So for any insurance that bills out electronically, it will go through and do an eligibility check automatically in the mornings. So that way, when you come into the practice, you know, okay, well, here's the patients have verified already have good insurance. Here's the ones that are coming back with errors. So maybe there's an issue with their insurance number. Maybe their insurance is no longer valid. We need to find, troubleshoot this here. And it's also going to show you the ones then that don't have any insurance assigned. And that way you can go through and make sure to get that insurance as well. If someone gets added to the scheduler after this point, so after the time that this automatic check has gone out, you can still actually force a real-time request, but it's nice to have this list off the get-go in the morning. You have an idea of what your day is going to look like. We can click onto this and go to the inquiry list right here, and this allows us to see any active inquiries or the history of inquiries in the system. We can also click new right here. This is where you can go through and search for a patient, choose what insurance we're going to be using, choose whatever provider in the system we're sending it for, what date of service we're sending it for, and then send request. If we click check eligibility manually, that's going to be a spot where we can say, hey, you know what? I called this insurance or I checked on their portal and here's what we found their benefits to be. Whereas if we send the request, this is going to be a real-time eligibility request. This will check electronically. Now, for whatever reason, that connection doesn't work because of the insurance is not set up properly for electronic checking. Well, then it would come back with an error or say there was an issue with the ID or something like that, and then that's where you can go through and do a manual check in the scenarios you need to do that. We click exit, this will just go ahead and close the scheduler, and if we click this button right here, it's just going to refresh the entire scheduler to make sure it's the most up to date. Scheduler should also auto refresh about every minute or so. If you have multiple locations, you can choose what location you're looking at right here, as well as you can switch to provider view if you'd like. And now it's going to show you your list of providers. So for multiple providers, you can look through specific provider schedules as well. Again, it just depends on what your workflow is for your practice. To book a time slot, my favorite way to do it, and I think it's the easiest way to do it, to find whatever time slot you want, right click, and then click add appointment. Now we can go through and search our demographics window. We can find our particular patient. So we'll do Scott Test here, double click, and this will bring up our add appointment window now. Down in the lower left-hand corner, we're going to see details such as um, do they schedule lots of appointments that cancel? Do they reschedule? Do they have ones that are booked? Do they show up to their appointment? So this will show their entire appointment history you can scroll through. Middle section right here is going to show details about this particular patient, such as insurance balances, addresses, things like that. Well, you have access to their billing notes and billing alerts. Top section is going to be about this actual particular appointment. What's the requested date, what location, and what provider, what time to what time. By default, since we're looking at 15-minute time slots on our scheduler, it's going to mark this as a 15-minute time slot. But if we click over here, change this to a 30-minute time slot, that will then auto change that time right here. This is the spot right here with a note we can go through and put information in about this particular visit. This is more so a visit based notes. So say, hey, the patient's running 15 minutes behind, they called or something like that. Just know that if a patient is using their patient portal and they do take a look on their patient portal, they can see the notes that are put here. So make sure that anything that's put in this particular spot is okay to be patient facing. You can also go ahead and select the referring provider from your referring provider list right here and have that assigned with this particular visit. And then we also have our appointment type here. If it's a brand new patient, you click to create a new patient here, it'll default to new. Otherwise, if they've already been in the system, it'll be marked as an established patient. If you need to schedule a recurring appointment, so say a set of treatment plan, go through and click that recurrence button. That's that blue button with the arrows there. In this case, we can say, all right, I want this to recur for 10 visits. I want it to go weekly. I want this to be every single Monday and every single Thursday. We can hit generate schedule right here, and this is going to go through and look for any days that there's appointments that are in the spots that we can't. So if there's an appointment at the same time and we don't have, we're blocking over booking, then we can have, there'll be a window that'll pop up here and saying, hey, there's an issue, there's an appointment that already exists. Or say we're closed on that particular day. Again, it'll pop up and say, hey, there's an error here. Once you go through and fix all of your errors, you can click set appointments right here. And what that's going to do is going to change this now. So you'll see that entire list of appointments you're scheduling. In this case, we can go ahead and click OK, and that's going to put that particular visit then on the scheduler here. We're using a pretty light color right now, which is yellow. You can see there is a little white symbol there. It's more apparent usually on other darker colors. That's going to say, hey, this is a recurring appointment. We'll also see details here as far as what the patient's name is, what time their appointment is, and then if you hover over, we're seeing more details, such as the appointment type, what times, date of birth, age, things like that. So all of those details can be changed. That's a user preference. We usually recommend having that set be the same for all provider or all users of the system, so that way everyone, if they're glancing at a scheduler, sees the same info. Again, that's something that can be set up during your first setup process. Additional features here. So if we wanted to modify this appointment, we can go through and click modify. That'll bring us back in. Now, because this is a recurring appointment, it's no longer going to let us modify. But for just a regular appointment, one-off appointment, we can go through and modify those appointment details there. In this case, if we wanted to say we made a mistake on this particular appointment and they said, actually not 9:30, I want 10:30, we could click cut right here. If it was a normal appointment, and move it to that 10:30 spot. Because this is a recurring appointment, we cannot move this around. We could delete this appointment or cancel this particular appointment, keeping the rest of the series, and then create a new appointment at that 10:30 time. So if we wanted to do that, what we would do is we would hit cancel. And then at that 10:30 time, we can right click and click recall. We can check our canceled list. We can find that particular appointment right here. Go ahead and click OK, and now that's going to show up right here. Now it's still showing this canceled appointment. We can also set it with user preferences to no longer show canceled appointments. Again, that's just going to be a practice preference. If we want to go through and create a quick note in the system, we can put a note right here. This will actually allow us to put in a note onto our scheduler. Type correctly here. We'll go ahead and click OK. That's going to fill in that particular time slot with that note. We can also reserve a slot. If we click reserve right here, there is no way to remove this by just right clicking. There's no X, anything like that. We'd have to click on the reserve button right here and click on the unreserve button. So that's why that's used. As far as a quick note, that should be pretty simple. We can just click that X button right there and then go ahead and delete that note. The other option you have as well is going to be a quick block. This is very useful if you need to block something off. Say, hey, this provider had to run out of the practice to pick up somebody from school or something like that, or is getting an oil change, whatever it is. So we can go ahead and put in a test block. You can choose what time to what time. So let's say it's 11:15 to 11:45. It'll be change it automatically to 30-minute duration. We can click OK. That's going to block that time off. Again, we can just click on that X right there to delete that block. The quick notes will work very similar to the quick blocks. We right click on this appointment because this appointment was created in a regular manner. It's not a recurring appointment like this one is right here. We can go through and we can hit cut and then we can paste it. So if we wanted to put this again at 11:30, we can put it again and paste it there. Um, and that's allows you to move appointments around. We recommend only using this really if um, the patient, if you're creating the appointment has made even a mistake in that. If it's a patient that's calling in saying, "Hey, I can't make this particular time, but I can do this later time," we recommend marking that as canceled because now it's going to track their cancellation status. What is their percentage? How often is this patient canceling or adjusting times and things like that, rescheduling? And that way, if they're consistently not respecting practice and provider time, you can then have that conversation with that particular patient. You don't want to see this left-hand panel, can click this button right here and that will show you just that full scheduler to hide it. Otherwise, again, you can open this back up again. Right clicking again, we have our access to our recall button as well as our waiting list. Those will basically pull into the same sections right here where we can access our waiting list, canceled appointments for recalling or any follow-up appointments. We can go through and bring appointments into a full schedule if a slot happens to open up. If you don't have overbooking blocked and you wanted to book a slot appointment in the same time slot, there's two ways you can do that. One, you could find it in another time slot, create an appointment, and then adjust it back to 11:30. Otherwise, you can find that little sliver right there, right click and click add appointment, and that'll still then bring you into booking an appointment for that particular time slot. We just choose whatever patient we if we're right clicking on a particular appointment, again, we can also mark them as arrived, canceled, or no showed, or confirm them. We can access their chart directly from here. We can create follow-up appointments, track their histories, access their encounter sheets, and then we can also deal with their appointment reminders. And this is all from here. This is where we can go through and create a appointment reminder to send out via email. Otherwise, the system will also have automated appointment reminders, say via text or email or phone call, depending on your practice preference. Now that we have this patient selected here as well, this opens up the eligibility section on the left-hand side. We can see if the request is been sent out yet or if there's a response that's been received. In this case, they're both pending because this is a test system with a test patient that doesn't actually have real insurance. So this about covers the scheduler portion. Up next, we'll be going through the dashboard function in the next video. And that's going to basically take us now from the scheduler section into the dashboard. A lot of systems really focus on schedulers as where the front desk lives and breathes. In this case, scheduler is actually not the main focus. You don't actually really live in the scheduler. It's more so you create an appointment when someone's calling in, and then from there, your day-to-day operations are primarily actually out of the dashboard, which brings a lot of really quick access, easy use information to your fingertips and allows you to track moving that patient through the practice, sending them back to providers sending them back up through you, and then that checkout process. So we'll be going into that in the next video. This has been Best Practices Academy training. Thank you.